Hey guys, so I just wanted to come and show you another demonstration of how I tie my geode shirts. Here's one quick example of what I mean by geode style. This one is mostly just horizontal lines. Usually they're more like circles, looking more like a cut geode. So anyway, this method is for getting these really sharp lines throughout the shirt. I use artificial sinew. It's called wax thread or artificial sinew on Amazon. If you go through my link tree on Instagram or TikTok, then you'll find a link for this. An Amazon Associates link just helps me out a little bit. It doesn't cost you anymore. But I'm going to go ahead and show you how I tie this up. I've got most of the shirt finished, but I have about 2 more chunks to finish up. I don't know what to call each of these things, but I basically just grab a section of fabric and then I tie the lowest section first and then do 3 or 4 more, however long the chunk is. So one of the most frequent questions I get is how I get really interesting lines instead of just straight lines or what looks like a bullseye. So this one isn't super interesting in the sense that it's like really zigzaggy, but yeah, I love getting these interesting results here. So the key to that is you need to grab sections in a messy way. What you shouldn't do if you want this to look really interesting, don't just pull one point up, do this, and then start tying. This will look like a bullseye. It will not look interesting. So you need to grab a section and literally just try to be messy about it. The messier, the better. The only trick is if it gets too thick, then sometimes the dye has a hard time getting into the middle sections. But you just have to experiment and figure out what works for you. So this is still attached down here. I'm just gonna leave a little bit of slack and go up here and tie. You don't need to waste time like cutting that off and then restarting. Sorry, I bumped the camera. So anyway, I'm just gonna wrap around this big chunk about 4 times. You don't want to do it more than that because then you have a hard time tightening it down properly and you'll just have like a big mess of thread here and you'll end up wasting it. So wrap it 3 or 4 times, and then you could do 3 more wraps after that if you really want to make sure that your line is tight enough. Okay, so we've got that wrapped up. I grabbed this in a really messy way, so that's the first start. If you want to add in some extra spicy details, grab some of the folds here and then pull in opposite directions, and that will help increase the amount of zigzaggy details that you get. So I like to do that once or twice. So yep, just grab a section and pull it, and then grab a different section, pull it in the opposite direction, and then you'll get some really interesting results that way. I think that's the beauty of this style, is when the lines look more like nature created them instead of a person. So, all right, now I'm going to take my handy dandy PVC pipe. This is just a scrap from a project that my husband was doing. And then I wrap it around this about 3 or 4 times. So now, since it's waxed, it's not really going to slip. I'm going to be putting all the weight on the pipe so that the string is not going to be on my fingers. And then on this side, I'm pulling on the shirt. So you never want to be like pulling the string with your fingers. That will hurt your skin. And then, oops, sometimes it slips from the other direction. So that's why pulling it as tight as you can and then wrapping 3 more times after that is sometimes a good idea. It won't slip anymore after you wrap it additional times. Okay. It's also helpful to have like a towel or something right here on your surface. I'm gonna grab like a sweatshirt. So you can put this down and then like you put your fist down on it and then you can pull like that. And then just protects your knuckles so that you don't accidentally hit the table. And then there's your first tie. And then just do a couple more after that. So I like how this looks. And I'll just keep going so you can see the rest of the details here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Just give it a little pull. That didn't hurt my hands at all. So the only way that this is going to be fun for you and something that you keep doing is if it feels good. And, you know, if you're hurting your fingers doing it, then it's not going to be any fun. So you could just do 4 wraps and then move on. I find that that does create nice white lines, but sometimes I just like to make a thicker line. And I think it also looks good to do a mix. Do some ties with just 4 wraps and then do some with 7 or 8, because then you get an interesting variety. Okay, so then so also the space between the ties is important. I am always about the length of my thumb here, so what is that, like 1 inch? When you get too much closer, you have a really hard time getting the dye into the center of this fabric. And for me, it's high priority for me that this saturate completely through, because I don't like to have white blotchy areas in here. So don't go with ties closer than 1 inch together if that matters to you. But I know some people do them closer and then they have to come up with strategies for getting the shirt saturated in there. So I haven't tried doing that. But totally up to you. There is no right or wrong way to do this. You also have to be careful not to pull it too hard, because then this will snap. I am usually right on the edge of this breaking. It starts to fray a little bit. You just, after doing it so many times, you start to learn there's like a clicking feeling where it's locking down into place, and then you know to stop pulling. Yeah, once it snaps, then it gets difficult to unwrap it because it buries itself in there. So as you can see, it's looking nice and messy here. There's not just one point. There's like several folds here. That's going to look really interesting when it's dyed and unwrapped again. Let's take my PVC pipe, oops, getting stuck here, and then wrap it 3 or 4 times. I'll just do 1 time there. So I like to try to make sure that it looks like a crumpled tissue, and then lock it down with the tie. Yeah, this one is going to be so good. I can feel it already. So there you go. Tie that down. And I basically just throw my roll of sinew on the floor, and it's down on the floor rolling around as I pull up the excess that I need. Sorry, the camera is bouncing every time I do this. And there's that. So we've got actually 5 on that one. That was good. You don't need to tie these off or anything. I'm just going to cut that because it's kind of in the way of this final section that I need to tie. So I've got like these 2 areas left. I'm just going to bunch them together and tie those up. It starts to get a little finicky by the end of it, but just do your best. The sloppier, the better. I think that is maybe why some people are frustrated when they first start off with geodes, is that you want to do a really good job and you end up doing it too neatly, and then the results don't look as wild and interesting as you'd like. So I like to pull. There's some extras in here I would have liked to tie, but it's like, I don't know if I'll be able to pull all of that in here. So anyway, I'm just rambling as I finish this up. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and do just a couple more wraps to make sure that it is tight enough. Better to do 3 wraps, tighten, 3 more wraps, tighten. Don't try to do like 7 or 8 wraps and then tighten. Then you risk wasting sinew and breaking it. Some people ask if I reuse the sinew, and I can't because I'm practically damaging it every time I pull it because I pull it so tight. I just want to make sure that the lines stay white. So I try to get them as tight as possible without breaking. One last strategy for trying to get this to be interesting here with the final section is you can like pull it in two directions and then push down in the middle and then pull the rest up, and that can make for some interesting results in there. And then wrap around. Alright, I hope that this demonstration was helpful. I know the idea of ordering sinew and using this for the first time can be a little intimidating, but once you get the hang of it after a shirt or two, you'll totally fall in love with it. So, yeah. If you post anything that you make inspired by this, tag me on social media so I can see what you make. And that's that. You don't need to tie this off or anything. Just cut it with a few inches. That's totally fine. No need to make knots. That'll make your life harder when you're trying to untie it. So now I'm going to go soak this in my soda ash bucket just long enough, you know, maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes, long enough for it to get properly soaked. And then I'm going to spin it out in the washing machine so that it's still damp. And I'm going to ice dye it while it's damp. Some people like to let it dry out completely. I don't like doing that because then sometimes the dye will seep under the lines. So just not my preference, but just always be experimenting and seeing what you prefer. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.